Let's talk hydrogen, the H2 Hub Hydroverse podcast. We talk to experts from the world of hydrogen and molecules. The big international innovation event will then take place on June 26th at this year's HYDROVERSE Convention in Essen, Germany. Find all the details at hydroverse-convention.com.
Jorgo, it's great to have you with us today. As CEO of Hydrogen Europe, you are a key voice for building a resilient and competitive hydrogen economy in Europe. Today, I'd like to explore where we stand and what we must do to accelerate progress in both Germany and across the EU. Last year, at our own HYDROVERSE Convention, you gave a speech entitled "The End of the Rainbow." This title called for an end to the so-called color theory in hydrogen classification, and 1 year later, it might also describe more poetically the end of an idealized era, as the initial hype around hydrogen seems to be giving way to a harsher market reality. So without further ado, I think I don't have to introduce you because all the hydrogen folks know you. Do you think that this end of the rainbow message and the call for more open views on what kind of hydrogen we need, how to regulate it, has resonated in any way, and does actual legislation or actual acts from Brussels tell a story that people understand that we need more openness in the hydrogen sector?
Well, first of all, thanks very much for the invitation to this interesting but also important podcast. And yes, dear Uwe, the end of the rainbow that we discussed a year ago is a reality, because people understand more and more, if you want to reduce CO2 in our atmosphere, basically you need to produce more molecules. Yes, that's the old style green hydrogen. But as the energy hunger grows exponentially, look at the AI development, the data centers that absorb a lot of new additional energy, there also will be a lot of molecule-based fossil energy. And we can clean this up. The processes to clean this up are the carbon capture technology, are the pyrolysis technology. All these technologies have other colors. That's why it's important to say colors are not important. What is important is to have CO2-free operations. And it resonates very well with politicians, with policymakers that have access to media, that announce big new schemes. So the Green Deal, that was the dominating issue a year ago, has now turned with the new European Commission into the Clean Deal. So the Clean Industrial Deal, CID we call it. And that's all about end of the rainbow. However, and here comes my caveat, and I'm not happy to say this, it's not turned into regulatory practice. So the guys who are doing in the end the not the law, that's the parliamentarians, that's the member states, but the so-called definitions that are delegated by delegated power to the Commission. These guys in the Commission don't do it. And I say clearly don't, because they go diametrically against this idea of technology neutrality or openness, however you call it. And that hurts. That's not good, because it's also not good for our democracy. If the people who are elected, who are basically, we the voters, delegate the power to them, they say something and the guys in the machinery room do something opposite. No good. This is no good. This is not good for our democracy. And if that continues, and it unfortunately still is the case, it will lead to much more right extremist or extremist parties that say democracy is not working. This is not democracy. It's an abuse. So I stop here. I don't want to go further, but we still have the possibility to rectify here and there. And there are possibilities to do that, and we discussed in our podcast about it. But yes, it resonated, and now we have to fine-tune that it also is mirrored in concrete definitions, rules, and actions.
So we know that you and Hydrogen Europe are strong and very active advocates for a smoother way into a hydrogen economy that is really working and that has or that allows or enables a lot of options. So I got the impression that it was understood even by the Commission or by the bureaucrats in Brussels that we need a kind of deregulation because the definition of green hydrogen especially was too strict or is still too strict. And as you said, we need more openness towards other colors. So you're saying that although like nations, politicians and stakeholders like yourself are calling for changes, the changes that are coming are not going in the right direction.
Well, I have the impression that people sitting in certain positions abuse their power at the moment. And I don't have the impression that the policymakers, so their bosses, the political bosses, are fully aware of that, because it is technology and sometimes it's difficult also to understand the outcome, the consequence of certain regulations for our technologies. I have to admit that. I could blame it on our sector. I can say we need to explain even more. It's not that. We explained a lot. It's really people abusing their situation, their position, but we can still fix it. I hope very much that with some new governments, we have a new government in Luxembourg, in Austria, in Germany. It was these three countries that did initiate the complexity with old governments, of the rules that we have. In all these three countries, we have new governments, and I can see already that they put pressure. Starting with Luxembourg, but Austria is now taking on, and the new German government will also play a very decisive role here. So yes, it is also time that they get aligned and address the European Commission to make things very down to earth, very pragmatic. Please don't get me wrong. It's not about shifting the targets. We want to have this 2050 climate neutrality. In Germany, it's even 2045. No compromise. Targets stay there. But, and the blackout in Spain and Portugal shows us, if we concentrate on one basket, all eggs in one basket, then there will be a delay because we have a restriction, a limitation by the power grids. And if we don't use the full extent of our grids, which is power and gas grid and the hydrogen grid that is between and is developing, so to have a strong combination of it, then we can decarbonize much faster. And that's the logic behind. Unfortunately, I say it clearly and loud, it's not understood by some electricity-only guys that think they lose if they give up on, money and investment for their technologies and grids. It's wrong. 2 or even 3.5 infrastructures and grids are cheaper than one, because you need to have redundancies. You need to create resilience. I think that's a no-brainer for everybody, but it needs action now in order to get where we want to go.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So shifting the topic a little bit from regulation and definition towards market and market design. We have talked a lot about the hen and egg problem. What should be incentivized? Is it production of hydrogen, import of hydrogen, or should we focus on the offtake? So, for example, in the German debate, we see a strong emphasis on now let's focus on offtake because we have production projects going on. We have put a lot of money in IPCEI and other projects in hydrogen production. So now it's about the offtake. What's your opinion on that? And is it reasonable or is it a good thing that nations like Germany and states like Germany are kind of fine-tuning these strategies by focusing on offtake? Or do you think this is also a European thing to find an answer to the question whether to support more production and import, or whether to deal with the challenges that off-takers face before they sign a contract, which seems to be the problem?
Well, it's not either or. You need both. But the mechanisms of investments have their rules. And if you would be an investor, if I would be a big investor, I would go to a customer who wants to build up a project, a renewable project or a pyrolysis project, and it comes to me and says, I want your money. I would say, do you have customers? Or if I invest into a real estate, I would say, do we have somebody who rents it? So you always need a market behind it. That's why demand basically comes first. And what we did over the years as Hydrogen Europe, as a hydrogen sector, you also did it with HYDROVERSE. We created basically an idea, a sketch, a design, a narrative, how this could work. Now people know it could work. I remind again, the Iberian Peninsula blackout. So if it is not implemented, we will have these blackouts more and more and more. Now, we created the narrative, everybody now understands, and still the off-takers did not sign. And the investors say, as long as the off-taker doesn't sign, I have difficulties. And that's not only Germany, that's all over Europe, basically it's all over the globe. But we created in Europe these market-making mechanisms like obligatory targets, for instance, in the Renewable Energy Directive, or in aviation, or in maritime. And they kick in a little bit later. So basically we are quite good in time. And we also should allow the hydrogen sector to have a little bit more of patience. So take the photovoltaic or the renewable electricity sector in the country which is, we talked about Germany. There was the first country to implement the Einspeisegesetz, the feed-in tariff, which was a long-standing, clear investment opportunity. So you would have been stupid not to go into that because you knew there is cash income if I install renewables. But we had patience with these guys. So we said you will get for many, many years the money. In our case, we don't have the money. We don't have the grid yet. We don't have the patience. Everybody says, where's your FID? And so we cannot apply the rules for renewables for a gaseous world because we have molecules that has normally other rules. That's why let's start with the offtake because for an investor, it's always the simplest thing. But let's be with the rules more flexible. Don't kill the small little plant with, injections of medicaments and of pharmacies that are too heavy for that small little plant. We don't exist yet. This is why investments will come, but we have to focus indeed on the off-takers, and that is happening at the moment. Lead markets. So with the lead market concept, we will talk about that.
Well, lead market is a very interesting point, but also you always emphasize hydrogen is also a resilience factor for Europe. So it's not just one of many interesting markets. So it's a very crucial thing to do. And you were talking about offtake and how we can enable off-takers to a signature under a contract. But do you think how can the EU support this further by, for example, procurement policy or infrastructure investment? Because it's not only the individual companies or sectors or industry we should support, but there are general rules in like European procurement rules or infrastructure investment topics. How do you think about these kind of things?
Let's talk about a concrete example, the steel market. So everybody in the meanwhile is aware that you can only decarbonize steel if you replace coal by hydrogen in order to take the oxygen out of the iron ore. And so the steel markets, the steel industry needs a lot of hydrogen. But nobody buys their steel then because it's more expensive. And if we look at the procurement rules, we will now build a lot of new bridges in Europe. There will be a lot of construction with a lot of steel consumption in the public sector, in the public domain. We will see also wind turbines being produced. All this, which is publicly funded, normally needs to go for the cheapest steel So that's what the procurement rules say. They say WTO, let's go for the cheapest steel, which at the moment is definitely Chinese and Indian, not European. We need to change these procurement rules, and that makes up a lead market. In a lead market, you say, okay, that's our target. We want to have clean decarbonization of our industries. Let's start with steel. Who is in it? And then some companies say, yeah, we would invest into the direct reduction of iron ore. How much can you produce? And then you go for the off-takers. You are the off-takers. So you have a bunch of people, like a group, like a partnership, that creates that lead market, which is basically moving forward. And then you define the rules that you need. The procurement rules will be changed. Possibly the complex definitions that we have in order to say, what is a green steel? So if you then say it needs to have green hydrogen from day one, then you might have a problem. But if you say, let's start to go from gray to green, let's start to have in the beginning a hydrogen that maybe has a higher CO2 footprint, but oblige them to decrease in CO2 emission, that makes up a lead market. So it's a combination of rules, of partners, of time, and of volume, and of the money that you possibly are willing to pay and put into this market. And we are working on lead markets in steel, in refining, in fertilizers, chemical products, and also in data centers, because data centers have promised their customers, the hyperscalers, so Amazon, Meta, Google, and Microsoft, the 4 hyperscalers, net zero. And at the moment, we have a lot of problems. They disconnected from grid because they have too much of electricity demand, and they produce their own electricity with turbines, sometimes oil-based, most of the cases gas-based. They are sold out. Gas turbines at the moment are nearly sold out because data centers have such a high demand. But they promise net zero. So here's hydrogen. We can deliver the net zero. But we need to overcome you mentioned it, the chicken and egg dilemma. Lead market will help us. There you go. And this is why I'm super confident that with the lead market concept, we will get there.
Mm-hmm. That sounds very promising, because I absolutely support your idea that we have to be more pragmatic in many ways. And I think the geostrategic situation we are in and the impulses we get from the US should make the EU even stronger in pursuing the goal of being more resilient and protecting our industry and, of course, our markets as well. But let us come from the European level to the German level, because states still play a very important role in this game. We are about to get a new government in Germany, this time without a strong advocate of climate protection, such as the Green Party, but yet on the other side with a new Minister of Economics who is an expert in energy, who is an expert in hydrogen. She is really someone who knows what she's dealing with. So how do you think the German government should proceed from here? Because, as you mentioned, steel industry is an important issue for Germany. Chemical industry is a very important issue for Germany. So what do you think should be on the agenda of the next German government first, in order to come to that goals that you've mentioned on the European level as well?
Yeah, first my congratulations go to Katharina Reiche, the new minister, upcoming minister. Katharina is a chemical engineer. I know her since she's elected as the youngest member of her party ever in end of the 90s. So she was 27, and yeah, that's more than 25 years ago that I met with her first time. And I followed her career. Her career brought her, first of all, to political decision-making processes. She was even quite young when she became state secretary in the ministries of environment and mobility. And then she quit politics. She started to be actively involved into municipal management, so waste, everything around molecules was her topic, not hydrogen only, everything about molecules. And then she became the CEO of utility, West Energy, a utility dealing with both electricity and gas. So very knowledgeable. And a few months ago, we talked about politics, and she said, I'm not inclined to go back to politics. I'm very happy with that situation. Maybe she would not have imagined to be offered that job of an energy minister. And why is it so extraordinary? Because it's very rare in Europe, and especially in Germany, that people change basically their career path. So normally politicians become very young politicians, like Katharina herself, and then they stay. I also had a political career before, and I now understand I enjoy very much to be outside of politics and to concentrate, in this case, on my sector. And Katharina did that. And now, with all this knowledge, with all this understanding of markets, she gets back to the political decision-making and highest level position. And you can imagine how important it is, not just for the hydrogen sector, for the whole German economy, that a knowledgeable person sits there. It's really a game changer. So, having said that, I expect Katharina to be super pragmatic, but not to give up on climate goals. She was the chair of the German Council on Hydrogen, the German Hydrogen Council, which is not an association. It's basically an advisory board of the old government. So her party was not in the old government, and still she was the chair of the advisory board. So extremely knowledgeable also about hydrogen, and I can really prove that the talks with her are high level and very knowledgeable. And I expect basically that she continues what has been started by Robert Habeck in certain areas. So look at the core grid, so the infrastructure connection. Look also at the so-called Kraftwerkstrategie, so the energy power production strategy, which was about to be gas-oriented, but phasing out and phasing into hydrogen. And I believe she should come back to all these elements. And I have no doubt that she will, with her pragmatic approach, go there. Let's not underestimate the role of the 2045 goal. So it's enshrined in German politics, and this coalition of conservatives and social democrats reiterated that they stick to the 45 climate neutrality goal, which is it's 5 years earlier than the Europeans, 800 billion more. So that's what people have calculated. On the other hand, they have gone into this debt system. So they changed already before they took power the constitution, and don't underestimate this. Now, as a hydrogen guy, I was very happy to see, wow, there is money to go for infrastructure and resilience. But I'm a father of 4 daughters. I know that they and their children, so my grandchildren, not existing yet, will pay back all this. So this is why. And Katharina is also a mom of 3. She knows that if we don't rubber stamp every cent and every euro we spend now on infrastructure, on resilience, on defense, with sustainable, innovative resilience factors, it will be just money thrown out of the window. But if we have this innovative, sustainable resilience idea on every spending, that's fine. And hydrogen is one of the carriers of good investments in this direction. And this is why I'm super confident that this new government, with this burden of this rearming and defense and infrastructure package, will make it right. But we need to support them. We need also to give them good ideas, innovative ideas, startup ideas, in order to go into the right direction. But Germany is a very rich country in patents, in ideas. It's not so strong in implementing. But now we have the chance. Pragmatism plus the money we have.
Absolutely. And this is what H2 Hub is doing as well, not only just supporting startups, being better and developing their ideas, but enabling them to play an active role in the crucial process that we need in order to implement new technologies, to enable industries to transform, to enable the substitution process of one molecule, gas molecules to hydrogen molecules. So this is very important. And I also agree that the pragmatic approach that we read in the coalition agreement and that we have heard from politicians of the now ruling parties is an interesting and very important sign to be more focused on implementation and results and not so much on ideology. So I agree that this is quite important and interesting to see. And of course, we will follow up and see what really is happening. But I'm afraid we have to come to an end. And I just wanted to ask you a question, and I will ask you a question. But before, of course, I need to make the comment that you mentioned that Katharina Reiche made her way from politics to economy to business and back to politics. So we are very curious when your next step is due and the calling reaches you. But this is not a question, just a comment. But coming back to my question, I know it's hard for you as a person that is very strong with words, but if you had just 1 minute with the EU leadership, what would your single key message be regarding hydrogen?
We had a long time where we turned a lot of money into knowledge in Europe and in Germany also. It's now time to turn the knowledge into money, into concrete projects. We have the engineers, we have the political will, we have the obligation. Let's just do it. And let's not talk it to death, because that's what we Europeans try to do. And that's why I stop here. Stop, turn knowledge, money into knowledge only, turn knowledge into money in the hydrogen sense. And let's scale up the hydrogen system.
That's a great statement. It's a very important statement for our target group, the startups as well. We have an idea. Let's make money with it. So we hope people are listening to your voice. Thank you so much, Jorgo, for taking the time to talk to us. And I'm also particularly pleased that you will be back live on the HYDROVERSE Convention stage in Essen on June 26th. And I'm very much looking forward to your statements there. And to you, all our listeners, if you enjoyed the episode, please follow us and subscribe to our podcast. Tune in next time when it's time to say again, let's talk hydrogen. Thank you, Jorgo, very much.
Many thanks, Uwe. Thanks for the invitation.
That was Let's Talk Hydrogen, the H2 Hub HYDROVERSE podcast. Get your ticket for the HYDROVERSE Convention and meet the leading experts from the world of hydrogen. All details at hydroverse-convention.com.